He is the one they say no living man can kill, a being filled with evil and horror, the king of Angmar, the lord of the Nazgul. Yet in Tolkien's early writings, he was a different type of being entirely. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the Wizard King of Númenor. He would come to be known as the Witch King, a mortal man given great ability and a great curse by a ring of power. But in Tolkien's earlier drafts and notes for The Lord of the Rings, he was not only a wizard, but his story and his death were entirely different. This Wizard King story is largely told in 3 volumes of the history of Middle-earth: The Treason of Isengard, The War of the Ring, and Sauron Defeated. In the first of these, we find Gandalf recounting the tale of meeting Radagast on the road, with the brown wizard bearing ill news.
Then he told me dread news, and revealed to me what I had feared without knowing it. This is what he said.
"The 9 wraiths are released," he said. "The enemy must have some great and urgent need. But what it is that should make him look to these desolate parts where men and wealth are scanty, I do not know."
"What do you mean?" said I.
"The 9 are coming this way," he said. "Men and beasts are flying before them. They have taken the guise of horsemen, clad in black as of old."
Then my heart failed for a moment, for the chief of the 9 was of old the greatest of all the wizards of men, and I have no power to withstand the 9 riders when he leads them. While no doubt anyone would have their hands full facing off against the entire group of ring wraiths, it's interesting that Gandalf mentions he would not be able to withstand them when the Wizard King is leading them. In the books, Gandalf faces down 4 Nazgul on Weathertop, and while it comes later when he's upgraded to Gandalf the White, we see him drive the Nazgul away with his beam of light upon the fields of Pelennor. It's also interesting to note that in this point in the story, he is described as the greatest of all the wizards of men, perhaps indicating he's not a higher being on the level of Gandalf. But more on this in a bit. Like in the final version of the Witch King, we see the Wizard King is certainly a very capable and powerful person, as we find in a conversation between Gandalf and Pippin in Minas Tirith.
"But he has come whom I feared."
"Not the Dark Lord," cried Pippin.
"No, he will not come except in triumph," said Gandalf. "He wields others as his weapons. I speak of one whom you have met, the Wizard King, captain of those you called the Black Riders, most fell of all the servants of the Dark Tower. But he is not taken to winged steeds. In him I am not overmatched, and yet still I am matched, for he was a member of our order before evil took him. Now his fury and malice are grown to the full, and men fly before him."
And then separately, written in notes, Tolkien says,
"But the Wizard King has not shown himself. He wields far behind a great fear that will drive his soldiers whither he will, even to cast themselves into the river that others can walk on their bodies. But he will come forth yet."
Here Gandalf confirms that the Wizard King was of his own order, and no mere man, a detail he also shared with Denethor and Faramir, as is revealed after Gandalf turns away the Nazgul with his beam of light. Denethor and Faramir marvel at Gandalf's power over Nazgul. Gandalf says things are still not so bad, because the Wizard King has not yet appeared. He reveals that he is a renegade of his own order, from Númenor.
"So far I have saved myself from him only by flight. For many an age he has lain in hiding or sleep, while his master's power waned. But now he has grown more fell than ever. But it was foretold that he should be overthrown, in the end, by one young and gallant. But maybe that lies far in the future."
Here we find Gandalf not only drops the bombshell that the Wizard King is no mere sorcerer of men, but indeed a fallen member of his own order, but we also get the indication that he was, at least at one time, stationed in Númenor. Now, for some time, fans have theorized that the Witch King was one of the 3 Númenorians said to have been given rings of power and therefore become Nazgul. But the idea that a wizard stationed in Númenor was corrupted by Sauron, presumably given a ring and transformed into a Nazgul, is interesting indeed. We don't get further details, but this is one of those great fragments of abandoned writings that bring about interesting what-ifs. If Tolkien had gone with this version of the Wizard King, what would his involvement have been like in the fall of Númenor? Would he have taken part in the human sacrifices and Morgoth worship? Would his body also have been destroyed in the downfall? Seeing another higher being active in Númenor would certainly have caused interesting ripple effects. What is also interesting is the completely different ending Tolkien envisioned for the Wizard King. Notice in our last excerpt that Gandalf says the prophecy is that one young and gallant would finish the Wizard King. Now here's a fuller account of that prophecy. And if words spoken of old come true, he is not doomed to fall before warrior or wise, men of war or wisdom, but in the hour of his victory to be overthrown by one who has never slain a man, or by one who has slain no living thing. And indeed, we find the Wizard King is killed by an entirely different character and in an entirely different location than the later Witch King. The Wizard King actually survives the attack on Theoden at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. In this version of the tale, which is essentially notes, Merry and Éowyn save the king, but before a sortie out of Minas Tirith can reach them, Éowyn is killed, and the Wizard King escapes. He then turns up again at the Black Gate, taking the place of the Mouth of Sauron from the actual version. There he tells the Free Peoples that they had captured a Hobbit messenger. Battle would of course ensue as Frodo and Sam make their way to Mount Doom. Just like in the canon story, Sauron sends the Nazgul to Mount Doom when Frodo claims the ring. An interesting side note here, during this iteration, Tolkien only uses the term Nazgul when the ring wraiths are on their winged steeds. Here he also notes that in his wrath, Sauron blasts the Palantir so that the Orthanc stone, the one used by Aragorn, explodes. Tolkien even theorizes that had Aragorn had it in his hand at the time, it may have killed him. Elsewhere, Tolkien also toyed with the idea that this character who we know as the Witch King would successfully arrive to confront Frodo at Mount Doom. As in the final version of this moment, Frodo does not do what he sets out to do. Then suddenly a new thought arose, not from outside, a thought born inside himself. He would keep the ring himself and be master of all. Frodo, King of Kings. Hobbits should rule. Of course, he would not let down his friends. And Frodo rule hobbits. He would make great poems and sing great songs, and all the earth should blossom, and all should be bidden to his feasts. He puts on the ring. A cry rings out. Nazgul comes swooping down from the north. The eye becomes suddenly like a beam of fire, stabbing sheer and sharp out of the northern smoke. He struggles now to take off the ring, and fails. The Nazgul comes circling down, ever nearer. With no clear purpose, Frodo withdraws into the chamber. Fire boils in the crack of doom. All goes dark, and Frodo falls to his knees. At this point, Tolkien gives a couple possibilities with Gollum, who arrives before the Nazgul and steals the ring. In one instance, Gollum is pushed into the cracks of doom by Sam, but then Tolkien pivots, saying perhaps it would be better to have Gollum repent, destroying himself and the ring by jumping into the fires below. And in this instance, we hear Frodo come once more face to face with the Wizard King, months after their encounter at Weathertop. Fire goes mad. Frodo is like to be destroyed. Nazgul shape at the door. Frodo is caught in the fire chamber and cannot get out.
"Here we all end together,"
said the ring wraith. Frodo is too weary and lifeless to say nay. "You first," said a voice, and Sam, possibly with sting, stabs the Black Rider from behind. Frodo and Sam escape and flee down the mountainside, but they could not escape the running molten lava. They see eagles driving the Nazgul. Eagles rescue them. Thus ends the Wizard King, slain at Mount Doom by one young and gallant, Samwise Gamgee. In some ways, we can see similarities between the Wizard King and his final Witch King form, and we don't necessarily see a huge difference in terms of skill of magic on display, though we do get subtle hints from Gandalf in particular. In the end, just as with the Witch King himself, and with Saruman the White, this character is capable of being killed, whether wizard or corrupted man. Naturally, I prefer the final version of this tale, but it's always fascinating to see the creative writing process of someone as incredible as Tolkien. And thanks to Christopher's History of Middle-earth series, we get to see these as they played out, and learn about intriguing concepts, like the fallen Wizard King of Númenor. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Z and N, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Next time on Nerd of the Rings.